Interview number 2 with our amazing gameplay programmer. Please introduce yourself briefly.
Hello, my name is Olof from Sweden. I work at Starbreeze as a gameplay programmer on Crossfire.
So you're a gameplay programmer.
Yes.
So what is a gameplay programmer?
Well, it means that you do a little bit of everything that has to do with the game, which could be related to what the player can do, what the enemies in the game can do, and how the interaction is handled between them.
Cool. So it's basically everything.
Yes, basically everything.
Cool. So how long have you been working as a gameplay programmer in this game industry?
Maybe for about 5 years now.
5 years now?
Yeah. My first job was in Kyoto in Japan, actually, at a smaller...
That was your first job?
Yes, my first job was a gameplay programmer. I was actually a game designer for about 2 years before becoming a programmer. It's a long story, but yeah.
A genius.
Well, yeah. Well, no. So, yeah, that's my first job as a gameplay programmer. Yeah, we worked on some games on the Wii U and mainly the 3DS. It was in cooperation with Nintendo, which was quite exciting, though, obviously. We worked with the guy who was the character designer on Star Fox. Yeah, so I was there for a couple of years. We did release one game called Trooper's on the 3DS. We made a demo for an announced game on the Wii U as well, but then Nintendo didn't want to make any more Wii U games because the Wii U wasn't going that well. So we made a 3DS game instead.
Awesome. So, and here's what projects you've been participated with.
Well, if we go back, way back to when I was working in the UK, I worked my very first game job as a game designer then was at a company that no longer exists. They were called Atomic Planet Entertainment. It was in the North UK, in a small town called Middlesbrough. And this company, Atomic Planet, they made mainly budget games for all platforms at the time, like PlayStation 2, DS,
quite a long
first
time ago.
one, yeah, the Xbox, and we made, it was really bad, crappy games. Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Imagine like this, and this was 10 years ago. Your mom goes to the store and she's gonna buy the new Call of Duty, and she picks up a game in the store and she looks at it and it's Call of Duty and it costs about £50, and she's like, oh, that's very expensive. So she puts it down, and next to it is this other game called, I don't know, Stealth Forces, and it's only £10, and it looks like Call of Duty, and it's very cheap, right? Yeah, so she's like, well, it looks like Call of Duty, so why not just buy this? It's really cheap. Those were the kind of games that they were making. Yeah. But at the time, as a first games job, it was super exciting, right? The people there, they've been there for like 8 years, so they were like tired of everything. And then I came there, young, 20 years. I'm like, oh my God, let's make games. Come on, let's do it. Right? Those were exciting times, even though that the games were not that interesting.
So you work in UK and then go to Japan, and then finally you come back to your hometown.
I did, yes. Yes.
So did you also work for the Payday 2 or just work for the Crossfire in here?
I did work on Payday 2 post-release for about a year. It was when I first came to Starbreeze, I spent about 1 year on post-release content on Payday 2. I think the biggest thing I did on Payday 2 was the last skill tree revamp.
Where I was with skill tree?
Yes. So I did all the new skills. Pretty much all of them. We had some
to use a sentry gun.
Yes, I did make some stuff for the sentry gun, like the new one, the one that you place down and can pick up, and you have different variations, right? You can change for to AP rounds, and back into a normal, and then also I did some improvements on the AI, like for example on it shoots, if it shoots on a shield character, it can detect if it's trying to shoot at a shield, and then it won't. And things like that too.
I love tank.
Yeah.
All right, cool. What is the great game for you? How do you define a great game?
Well, I'm a big fan of Nintendo games, so I think for me...
Super Mario, for example?
For example, yes, Zelda and most games that they do. To me, it's all about the control. You know, that you control something and you control it in some interesting way, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be a character or a vehicle or anything like that, but it has to be that to start off with, it's interesting and fun to control whatever it is you're controlling, and then you build all the rules around that. That's a fun game, you know, to me.
Great answer.
Yeah, thanks.
So basically, the control is the most important thing in developing games. That's right.
I think so, yeah. And you know, if it's that type of game, you know, platforming games, they obviously rely on that very much, you know, jumping and moving and all that. If it's a strategy game, you click with the mouse, it may be difficult to do control, you know, because it's not really what that game is about. It's more like planning strategies, right? So, yeah, it depends on the game, of course.
All right, great answer. So, do you love playing games?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking because there's some developers they're not actually playing video game, but their job is just to like occupy artists and programmers, whatever. So that's why I'm asking. You just told me that you have experience in UK and also Japan and here. So, what are the differences between the game companies in Western and Eastern countries?
A lot. I mean, let's see.
Just a few important things.
Yeah, work culture and work ethics, definitely. People in Japan, the people I work with, you know, obviously they stay very late. They work long hours too. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have work to do, but it's very much a value to be present. I mean, in the office, right? And it's very highly valued to be present. Even if you don't have anything to do, it's more important to be there, and that's what mostly counts. Yeah.
Be there right time.
Yes.
Morning and
yeah, it is. And we think more of efficient work hours, I think, in Sweden. You know, you should only be here, you know, 8 hours, and then be efficient that time, and then go. And people are pushed to, like, you know, go home. It's good for mental health, they say. Yeah. I think in my case, because the company I was at was being run by a British guy, actually.
Really?
It was being run by Giles. It was his name. He used to be at Nintendo as well, so he had good connections with them. That's why we were working with them. So I don't think that he wanted that particular work culture that they had a normal Japanese company. However, the game director from Nintendo was always at the office every day.
He's Japanese guy.
Yes. So that means that, you know, he expected people to be working like you do in Japan, right? So it took him a while, I think, for him to accept that the non-Japanese staff would not work as you do if you're Japanese, but the Japanese staff would most of the time do. They would be there before, you know, until he went home.
I don't know what you're saying exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And you get surprised sometimes because, you know, he didn't necessarily give people a lot of stuff to do, but they still had to be there.
I know.
It's difficult, you know, for me to grasp, because it's like, why?
All of our listeners will understand what we're just trying to say.
It's like, you know, be efficient with your tasks.
Yeah, I think that's important, yeah. So right now, loot boxes is becoming a huge issue all over the world. So what do you think about loot boxes for the game, basically?
Well, I think it depends on how you use loot boxes.
How developer is, right?
Yeah, or how it is intended to be used in the game. I know there are some pay-to-win games where you can buy loot boxes and they give you an advantage. They are not so that type of loot box that give you an advantage. It's not very popular, at least not in Europe and America.
You in the Western market?
Yeah, the Western market, right? So I think the Western market appreciates loot box more than cosmetic. That where you get items that are only, you know, to pimp your character. You know, you get a new cool hat or a new cape or something like that. That only gives your character a different look, so that you can differentiate yourself, you know, from the rest of the other players with your character. Even though you have the same character, he can look different. If it gives you an advantage, people will not like that. I really doubt that. I mean, some have tried it and it wasn't very successful.
But as you know, that the company such as EA.
Yeah. So how? I mean, yeah. I think like the last Battlefront, right?
Yeah.
Do they have advantages? Do you get like increased skills or strength and so on in those loot boxes?
Slightly different. Just impossible to get some real characters in the movie.
Okay. Oh,
that's,
yeah.
That's beta. You need to spend like 400 hours to play a game. That
yeah, I read about that.
Otherwise, you need to pay. So, do you see any effort need to keep the game from turning into gambling?
I think that's not very interesting. Yeah, if it goes into gambling, that's I don't like that. I mean, we already have gambling, but I can see that the companies, you know, from a money perspective, would gain a lot on making gambling, because, you know, gambling is addictive to a lot of people, right? So you would probably gain a lot of money. I mean, some games like Candy Crush is very...
Also from here.
Yeah, Candy Crush is, you know, using I read they have a lot of gameplay mechanics into the game and visuals as well that, you know, trigger the same type of emotions that would trigger a person that are going to a casino, you know, to do some kind of gambling there as well, you know, with roulettes and machines there. So yeah, but if, I don't know, like FPS games that we make, I don't think that they would suit very well to.
So the important thing is
gambling.
How the developers uses loot boxes.
Yes.
Do you think we need any sort of regulation is needed, as the European government says, like the Belgians and?
I think maybe. I mean, if it does turn into gambling,
that's why they're worried. The high level people.
Yeah, right. I mean, there are restrictions on casino, you know, mobile apps on casino and so on. And if companies that make games do the same thing but in a different way, they sort of like get around that system, then maybe they need to look at some games that are gamble-ish in the same way that they look at games or the, you know, casino games too.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for the honest answer.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for the people who want to be a great game programmer just like you?
Sure, absolutely.
Not for the student, all people.
Everybody. I think. I mean, number one, making games is not the same as playing games. That's number one. You have to be passionate about the creation part, whatever it may be. If it's programming related, which in my case it has become, then I think if you want to start doing some gameplay programming or game programming, I think the way to go is just to maybe even, you know, copy an old game like Super Mario. You know, just make a character and make him jump and run and hit, you know, some enemies or something like that, and try and copy that and see how far you can get. I know some people try to learn programming by learning programming, but that's kind of not so interesting, because you're like, hey, let's do this if thing and a loop and then print some text, and it's not very interesting. It's more fun to, you know, try and render a sprite and then try and make the sprite move, you know, make it jump and so on, and then you get some more interesting feedback. I think that's the way to go if you want to learn gameplay or game programming in general.
Do not just study, make something.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, even if you copy Super Mario, you can start off by doing that, and then eventually you probably get your own ideas and you start to implement then. And eventually it won't be Super Mario anymore, it'll be something else. that you made, but you have to start somewhere, and I think that's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think there's gonna help for the people who want to be a game programmer.
Good.
Mm-hmm. So finally, the last question. Any message to people, I mean basically the gamers who are looking for their Walking Dead, the Crossfire?
Walking Dead. I hope you like to stick together, because in Walking Dead you're gonna need it. It's all about co-op, right?
Mm.
Yeah. It's all about working. It's all about working together, and I think in this game it's going to be even more important than in Payday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's going to be so many more, more elements to the gameplay.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Goodbye.
Goodbye.